This Snazzy Tapier production is made possible by our patrons. If you'd like to join them, head over to patreon.com/snazzytapier to get early access to new episodes, access to the members-only Discord, and our exclusive monthly newsletter. Now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to A Game of One's Own, a podcast all about solo and duet tabletop role-playing games. I'm your host, Maddy Searle. My pronouns are they, them, and today we are playing the surreal dating duet RPG That's a Moray by Armaan of Stories with special guest Poorna M. Poorna, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Maddy. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. My name is Poorna M. My pronouns are she, her. I am a TTRPG wearer of many hats based in India. I design things, write things, edit things, and occasionally do layout, and even more occasionally pop up on AP streams, especially if they are for charity. And fun fact, I have a special connection with the creator of this game in that they are my partner. And we also make games together under the banner of Weave Storytelling Games.
Amazing. If you want to find anything from both Armaan or Poorna, you can head down to the podcast description and find links to all their stuff there. And I also believe you have a credit with reluctant help from Poorna M on this game too.
I do. It's true. If you do check out the layout or the cover for this game on armaanofstories.itch.io, you will see that, in fact, Maddy is right. This game was created with reluctant help from me. Only in layout, mind you. All the silliness, that's all Armaan.
Excellent. In this game, Poorna and I have to secretly decide whether we're playing as a regular human looking for love or a moray eel in disguise. And we've each answered a few prompt questions, also in secret, to help build out our characters' motivations. So I'm going to cut very shortly to future Maddy, who's going to describe to you their character and what they're like. And Poorna is going to remain a mystery until the end of the game, when she's going to reveal exactly what she was playing all along. Hello, future Maddy here to tell you about my character, Rowan Mackenzie, who is a human who uses they-them pronouns. They're a bassist in an indie band called the Dry Stone Wallers. They're an incorrigible hipster, scared of looking foolish and being vulnerable, but secretly full of passion. And I needed to answer 3 questions as a human, which are different from the questions you have to answer as an eel. First question is, what first led you to believe that the person you've chosen to date might secretly be a moray eel in disguise? I've said indications of mucus on their skin. Second question is, why is finding someone to love important enough that you would take on the risk of your romantic partner secretly being a moray eel in disguise? My answer is, I keep up a facade of coolness and imperviousness, but it's wearing me down, and I want to find someone who will accept my messier side. Third question is, exactly how foolish are you going to feel if you find out that your romantic interest isn't a moray eel in disguise? I said, pretty damn foolish. It will prove that my fears are ridiculous, but I'll also be relieved. And now, back to the past. Next up, we have to discuss openly how our characters met and how they feel about each other. So, Poorna, how do you think our characters met?
I'm going to say Mariam Mansouri, that is my character. I feel like we probably met when Mariam was buying groceries. I feel like we met in line to pay for our shopping and got to talking because it was taking a very long time because of an ordinary customer or something who was at the cashier.
That seems very rom-com to me. I'm thinking of, for some reason, the scene in You've Got Mail where Meg Ryan is at the counter having an awful time. So, any other details about your character that would be immediately obvious to my character?
Let me think about that. What about you? What would be super obvious to my character?
So I think Rowan Mackenzie is probably quite a tall, gangly looking person, probably has a they-them pronoun badge on their jacket, which is inevitably denim and covered in all sorts of patches. They probably have a badge for their indie band, the Dry Stone Wallers, on their jacket as well. And yeah, just generally a sort of an air of classic hipsterishness about them.
Love it. I think in contrast, you would see that Miriam is quite petite. Definitely looks like they could have auditioned for classic petite characters like Tinkerbell in plays, if there were such plays going on. And I think Miriam's going to have noticed the pronouns badge and the band badge and the band pin, and will sort of inwardly appreciate it as a clearly introverted person, that there is information about you already well on display, and also that there is something that she can use to start a conversation without feeling like she has to say something like, wow, aren't you tall, or something equally stupid. So yeah, our characters probably got to talking about your band. Oh, maybe that can be our first date. Like maybe you invite Marion to like band practice or something.
Yeah, that's nice. What was it that first attracted your character to my character?
I recognize that this might not make a lot of sense. Well, actually, no. I know our audience. This will make a lot of sense. Miriam is an analyst by occupation. So I think the fact that Rowan can be drawn using a lot of straight lines is something that they will greatly appreciate.
Yeah, lots of angles. I think, Rowan definitely has great cheekbones. I think we just have to, as someone with very plump cheeks in real life, I like to play a character with very visible cheekbones.
Yeah, so I think all very the angular physique, I think, is definitely something that would have attracted Miriam to Rowan. What about you? What was the first impression that Miriam made on you?
I think that Rowan looked at Miriam and picked up on the kind of introverted energy and thought that this is a person who's probably not going to be overwhelming, but is going to be sensitive. And I think if there was any sign of the kind of the scientific element of Miriam's kind of life, I think that as someone who is in a very unstable creative field, I think the stability and predictability of a scientific profession would be attractive to Rowan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in contrast and predictably, the creative sort of not every day is the sameness of Rowan's life, or at least that's what Miriam would assume would be part of what would be attractive, you know? Like, oh my God, you're in a band. That sounds very different to being an analyst. Yeah, I think. And also what I love is you said, oh yeah, the introvertedness is definitely apparent, and so you wouldn't be overwhelming. And so I just thought to myself that Miriam's like dating profile, should she have had one, would have been, will not overwhelm your senses. It's just like the opposite of what you want.
Awesome. So yeah, we've had our meet cute, and we have each as players prepared 2 lists of questions to help us determine whether our date is our true love or a slippery eel, or perhaps both. If we determine a yes or no answer to any of these questions during our dates, we make a mark on our love and paranoia tracker. The tracker looks like there's a column for the number of dates. There's a column for that's a moray, as in that's a moray eel. So we're going to call that the red flag list for audio ease. And then there's the that's a moray, as in love column. So we're going to call that the green flag list for ease.
But we are going to audibly say, oh, I've got to tick something off a list, but we won't be saying which list we're ticking, right?
Yes, absolutely. And when one of us has made 3 marks on our tracker in a single date, that date will end. And when one of us has made 10 marks in one column, either the green flag or the red flag column, the game will end, or we can just choose to end the game at a time that feels narratively satisfying to us as storytellers. And then at the end of the game, we look at the book to determine which ending we got.
At the end of our meet cute, what do you think we decided? So my suggestion was that I was excited about the band, so something to do with your band. But we could go completely different. We could go for a pizza pie, as the title of this game suggests.
Yeah. How about we combine the two? How about we meet towards the tail end of band practice, so you can come and watch the band in action. And then after that, we go off, just us, to go and grab a pizza pie.
Oh, that sounds great. I love it. Let's do it.
Amazing.
So what time of day do you think it is when this is happening?
I think it's probably a weekend. I think it's probably early evening. I doubt that any members of this band get up before 11 a.m.
You say that like that's unusual, Maddie, and I feel personally...
I mean, I'm exactly the same, but
yeah. Okay, cool. So it is early evening. So how shall we set the scene?
Before Miriam comes in, Rowan is sitting in the corner with their bass, because of course they're a bassist, and is kind of noodling quietly while the lead singer and the lead guitarist have some heated creative debate. I think it's some kind of hired room with soundproofing, because we used to practice in someone's garage and the neighbors complained, so we had to find somewhere a bit more soundproofed. And yeah, it's probably not the nicest. It's probably got some odd smells that no one is quite sure where they came from, but it works. It's a room that will not disturb any neighbors. So when Miriam comes in, knocks at the door, Rowan will come and let her in.
Miriam will have borrowed a bomber jacket from a friend to look cooler than she really is. Then will have spent a good hour trying to decide which of the rest of her clothes is actually the coolest to wear, and freaked out and ended up just wearing jeans and a t-shirt under the bomber jacket. But the t-shirt, I think also of all the t-shirts that she has, she probably was wondering which sends the right or the wrong message, and ended up going with like a plain black t-shirt because she was worried about all the other messaging. So black bomber jacket, black t-shirt, and light blue jeans.
Nice. I think that Rowan is wearing almost exactly the same outfit that they were wearing in the supermarket, but just a different t-shirt, another indie band t-shirt.
What color would you say it is?
Ooh, I think that this t-shirt is purple.
Nice. I appreciate that. And Miriam also appreciates that. Miriam will sort of like wave awkwardly at the rest of the bandmates and try to make herself as small as possible against the wall of this enclosure. Just try to be like, oh, should I stand here? Okay, yep. Mm-hmm. I just try to be as unobtrusive as possible, but in the manner that all comedies or romantic comedies share, will end up probably causing some kind of cymbals to crash somewhere onto the ground that were not being used.
Yeah, maybe you lean against an amp and then the amp topples over and causes a domino effect with some cymbals that aren't currently in use. A sort of Rube Goldberg machine of noise is set off, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. So what's the vibe of this song that they're practicing just after Miriam gets there?
I think it's sort of indie alt rock, and while it's got quite a simple melody, it's got a lot of jangly guitars underlying the vocals and some perhaps shoegaze style sort of blaring distortion. Yeah, it's one of those ones where if you stripped away all the trimmings, it would sound like a very simple 60s pop song, but with all the pizzazz added on top, it sounds like a very grungy indie melody. Yeah, I think it's also making some references to some French philosophers.
Of course it is. I love it.
And I don't think Rowan is particularly au fait with the philosophers that the lyrics mention, because that's all the lead singer, and is just happy to be part of it.
Love it.
So after the practice finishes, I think Rowan kind of shuffles up awkwardly towards Miriam and says, there's a pizza place around the corner that we could go to if you want.
Oh, yeah. That sounds great. Let's do that. So I think Miriam will start the sentence, "Are your friends?" Because just automatically started to ask, "Are your friends going to join us?" And then in the middle of the sentence goes, "Why are you saying these words?" And then so it does like a brain freezes and goes, "Are your friends? They eat, right?"
Yeah, they eat food generally. Sometimes they forget. but I think they've got other plans. So if it'll be just us, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's good. That's yeah. Anyway, we should go have the food. Looking mortified at the lack of verbal skills, Miriam moves to leave the premises.
Excellent. When we get to the restaurant, which is probably similar to the practice room, slightly grimy, but in this case has very pleasant smells coming from it, which is a relief. Rowan tentatively slides a menu over and says, do you want any starters? This place has good calamari, I've heard, but I've never really tried it.
You see that Miriam blushes really hard and wants really badly, like, not to be fussy, but goes, yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm very, very allergic. But hey, you know what? I'm always up for some garlic bread or some, and then looks mortified also having suggested that on a date and goes, fries? Fries are good also.
You see that despite your panic, Rowan is actually also relieved. And Rowan was like, I wanted to seem sophisticated, so I said calamari, but actually I don't want rubbery tentacles in my mouth. That's not something I really want. I don't know why I said that. Okay, yeah. I mean, bread is good.
Bread is good indeed. When you say bread is good is when also Miriam says bread would be good, like at the same time. And I feel like there's like a moment where they're like, breathe slightly easier.
Yeah. And I'm also going to make a mark in one of my columns.
As am I. Actually, I'm going to make 2 marks. Just because of how nervous she is, Miriam's going to like keep asking for more and more water. I get to think maybe they start with iced tea or something and it just keeps on gulping down more and more liquids as the night goes on. And we'll definitely ask you more about the kind of music that you grew up listening to, what you like, how your tastes have changed in the last few years, if like, or however long you've been playing with a band. And also, I think we'll try to put on music or request music of the establishment that she thinks will impress you.
Nice. Yeah, I think Rowan will talk about David Bowie as a very obvious influence, and we'll sort of talk about it as of course, I barely need mention David Bowie. And we'll also reference some shoegaze from the 90s, and perhaps also some kind of New York-based indie bands, and that will be kind of the vibe of what Rowan is putting down. Do you think that Miriam will recognize any of these bands that Rowan is mentioning and also be a fan, or do you think that this is kind of Greek to you?
I mean, I think Miriam will initially look very proud of herself because when you mention David Bowie, Miriam knows who that is. But when you start mentioning more obscure bands, like you can see the panic return to her face. And then I think she will excuse herself, go to the bar to ask them to put on something that she likes. And it's a song called Electric. And it's also by like this random band that was locally famous, maybe 5 years ago, or that the song is 5 years old at least. And then we'll return to the seat being like, okay, I've taken control of the situation. This is good. This is good news.
Rowan will probably have clocked what you did and was nervous about what song was going to come on. But when this song comes on, they're like, oh, actually, this is pretty good. Okay, I can relax. And we'll put a mark in a column as well.
Do you think Rowan bobs their head along or like does a full dancing and while sitting kind of thing? Or yeah, how do you think Rowan reacts?
I think it's definitely a nonchalant head bob and maybe a finger tap on the table, almost as if they're strumming on their bass.
Nice. I put another mark on my list. Miriam is really glad that Rowan is vibing to the song that she's chosen. So I guess then the topic turns to what are your favorite kind of foods, kind of also feeling out whether there is room for another date to be gently suggested, that kind of thing. And then obviously also Miriam does a whole thing where she panics and says, not that all dates need to be about food. Obviously, I mean, we can do so many things, but also this is good. This is fine. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but equally we can do whatever you like. And then so we'll keep on babbling until you stop her.
I think eventually when Rowan realizes that this is what's happening and it's actually important for them to interrupt, they will say, actually, like, my mum's cooking is probably the best I've ever had. It's just really comforting. It's kind of quite traditional British, Scottish food, but yeah, she just really does it really well. At the risk of sounding like really basic, just like her roast potatoes are amazing because they're all crisp on the outside and soft on the inside. And yeah, I know, carbs, but hey.
Honestly, I have this running joke with my friends where every time we meet, we have to have something with potatoes in it. And we, I think a few years ago, all got little keychain charms that say potatoes are life. So when you're talking about your mum's cooking, Miriam's face colors entirely. If you could read her mind, I feel like you would see, oh my God, are they about to suggest you have a meal with the family? It's date 2. And then I was just like freaking out inwardly, but nodding with like glazed over eyes outwardly. When it's clear that you're not about to suggest this, when you go to roast potatoes, and before Miriam says the thing about this in joke, I think without realizing what she's doing, she will just like go, oh my God, and like reach out and hold your hand, go, oh my God, this blah, 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 in joke. When Miriam does this, how does Rowan react?
Rowan initially looks like a deer in headlights, frozen blank expression, eyes wide, but then after a moment kind of realizes this wasn't a mistake. She clearly meant to do this. This isn't a sign of threat. Kind of leans into it and doesn't move to initiate any more physical contact than that, but just sort of after about 5 seconds, like, I accept this. This is pleasant.
Amazing. I think also as the dinner continues and like the next time the waitstaff brings the next drink or the next iced tea or whatever, at that point, Miriam will let go of your hand in a more organic way and shockingly in non-awkward fashion. At that point, Miriam will say, like Miriam's eyes will sparkle and she will suggest that there is this place near where I work, which is kind of a little private park by the lake where people go sometimes for picnicky things. If you're not doing anything next weekend, would you like to go for a picnic?
That sounds really nice. Yeah, I could do that. Anything particular you'd like me to bring?
Oh, well, I was thinking some sort of very sort of snacky foods. So nothing that needs to be warm to be enjoyed, like cold cuts, sandwiches. That's the kind of thing I was thinking. So when I bring something snacky and you bring something snacky, and then when it gets too cold or too dark, we can just go somewhere for a coffee or an ice cream or something.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'd like to ask a retroactive question, which is going to sound really weird, out of character. While we were eating the pizza, did Miriam have a powerful bite?
I would think that when Miriam is having the crusts, Miriam did have a powerful bite. Also, at the same time, Rowan was presumably also having some drinks. How would you say Rowan drank the drinks? In what fashion?
I think probably a lot of sips. I don't think they would chug at any point, really. I think it was mostly kind of delicate sipping.
I will say I do have 3 marks in one column.
Nice. Okay. I think that very neatly brings this date to a close with the promise of the next one. So is there anything that Miriam would do in between this date and the next one that would be of interest to the listener?
Honestly, I feel like might practice saying regular phrases in the mirror. Just because there are moments from the date that I think Miriam will replay in her head a lot as times when I could have said 3 words and I said 74, and then just try to be like, I'm going to pop to the loo. And like, I feel like ordering a drink. How about yours? Like, just regular phrases. Just be like, I need to act like a human.
Very fair. Whatever species you are, I feel like that can be relatable to a lot of people.
Exactly.
Rowan is trying not to think about it too hard because they know if they try and overanalyze, they could go down a massive spiral of overthinking. So they're trying to concentrate on their everyday tasks, like going to practice and maybe doing a cafe job on the side to make some extra money. Rowan might slip up one day and do a cheeky just Google Miriam's name, just see what comes up, not do any kind of deep dive, but just sort of see what the search results are. What do you think Rowan would see on the kind of top search results?
So the top search result, I feel, would be some various Miriams that the photos don't match the person you've met. And then there will also be a search result for, what would you say the town's called that we're in? The city or the town? Stonebury, or something equally pointless.
Yeah, that sounds good.
The result would be Stonebury Marine Research Labs. Miriam's name would show up as Miriam Mansouri, analyst, but there wouldn't be a photo with her name. And she didn't really talk about work, so you don't know if it actually matches the person that you actually met. But yeah.
Do you think that Miriam would arrive at the site of the date early to kind of set up and make sure that the picnic was ready? Or do you think...
I think Miriam would definitely show up early, but not necessarily set up. I think Miriam would wait near the gate to not appear overeager.
Rowan would have tried their best to be on time, but wouldn't have quite managed it. So to mitigate that would have been running there. And so arrives probably not too late, probably only a few minutes late, but completely out of breath. And so it's like, I'm sorry, I'm a bit late. I hope I haven't kept you waiting. Yeah, are you okay?
Yes, I'm good. Are you alright? You should, don't worry, you're not late at all.
Oh, thank you.
Do you want to catch your breath, or should we head into the park?
I'm happy to head in. Yeah. I needed the exercise, to be honest.
So Miriam is wearing a floor-length maxi dress thing, which is several shades of blue, and has tied her hair back and is attempting to look breezy and relaxed in a way that she's never really felt ever.
And I think Rowan is in exactly the same outfit, but just with a different t-shirt again. And this time the t-shirt is orange.
Okay, cool. So Miriam's gonna walk the path, but also kind of let Rowan decide which way to go, because she's much more familiar with this park because it's near work. And just kind of lets Rowan lead the where they're going to set up the picnic decision.
I think if there's a sort of water feature or rock garden kind of area, I think that Rowan would gravitate towards that. If there's the gentle tinkling of water from a fountain or a small waterfall.
So it's a park on the banks of a lake.
Mm.
So would you go closer to the lake or to a feature such as you just described?
Yeah, I think by the lake would be nice. I think seeing the light reflecting in the water would be a nice setting.
Miriam has a little cooler that she's carrying and sets it down and has little sandwiches like cucumber and cream cheese sandwiches, but also like little pots of like chocolate mousse and stuff. Maybe some soft drinks or something.
I think Rowan has brought some incredibly stodgy foods such as pork pies and Scotch eggs and sausage rolls. They're all sort of oddly pork themed.
Sounds great. So we lay down the blanket and we kind of sit and set out all the food. Miriam decides to ask more questions about like where you grew up and what has brought you to Stonebury if you aren't from here. Lore related questions, but not too personal.
Yeah, and I think Rowan is happy to kind of sketch out the basics of they're from a town further north, and while they love it a lot and it was a very beautiful place to grow up and their family still lives there and they try and visit as often as they can, it didn't have a lot going on arts wise, so they needed to move somewhere that was a bit busier, had a bit more going on in terms of gigs and culture. So that was their rationale for moving to Stonebury. And Rowan kind of Uno reverse cards the question back onto you and wonders where Miriam was from, what brought her here if she wasn't from here.
So I think Miriam grew up in the suburbs of Stonebury and so is like very much from here. And so has kind of the opposite view of like, doesn't regard Stonebury in the same way that Rowan does, and that a similar perspective, and that wants to move somewhere with more going on, but doesn't think Stonebury is that place. So it's just like, I don't know, I want to go somewhere where there are more mountains and valleys, and like this lake park is my favorite place in the whole city. And I'm happy to share this with you, but I just can't help thinking that if we were somewhere with beautiful hiking trails and places where you could go snorkeling, or well, maybe you don't have that many places where you can do both, but she looks sort of across the lake and you can see like, it's a pretty small lake, so you can see the neighboring towns, and the lake is too small for there to be like a ferry service, you know, but you do have little paddle boats and stuff. Miriam says that I want to be able to look out at a lake or a river or a sea and only be able to guess where the horizon will take me. I can't do that here.
Another odd question out of context.
Mm-hmm.
Does Miriam wear glasses or contact lenses or show any sign of having poor natural eyesight?
I think Miriam does wear contact lenses. I'm not sure how it would come up though. Maybe like at some point Miriam's eyes are a bit red and you ask about it and I'm just like, oh no, it's just my contact lens must have.
Yeah. Just a kind of general, are you okay type question. After Miriam has explained how she feels about wanting a kind of wide horizon to look out over, Rowan naturally sort of leans in and maybe touches her hand again, but this time they're initiating it. What does Miriam's skin feel like? Does it feel like relatively smooth and dry, or is it kind of clammy or wet? You may be sensing a theme in the questions that I'm asking, but I don't know how else to make ticks in my columns.
Miriam's palms feel clammy.
Cool, okay.
But her skin at the top of her hand feels very dry, which is nice and confusing. Take that as you will.
Okay, cool. I'll need to mark a column, so I'll just kind of pick one and see if that turns out to be right.
Is Rowan like, aside from the t-shirt, is Rowan carrying any more layers? Or are they just like, this is what my skin is supposed to feel like right now?
Yeah, it's a pretty ordinary outfit. It's just like the denim jacket, the t-shirt, the jeans. There's no attempt to obscure their skin in any way.
Got it. And so how many marks do you have totally?
Overall, I have 5, and I've made 2 this date.
I have 6, and I have made 2 this date as well. When you reach for Miriam's hand, I feel like, again, Miriam colors and does not move her hand, but will kind of reach for her phone to put on a playlist that, when she shows it to you, you see is entitled "Please Think I'm Cool." And it's just like a bunch of songs. And Miriam's like, I really hope you like that I like this song.
I think Rowan will notice that and kind of think carefully about how to bring this up in the conversation and will settle for something like, you don't have to like perform yourself for me. You can just be yourself, because from what I've seen, the self you are is pretty cool naturally.
I appreciate that, because I don't think much of the world feels like that. Miriam says, and kind of like is lost in thought for a second. How does Rowan react to that?
I think Rowan's kind of unsure how to continue the conversation from that point, so we'll try and offer a pleasant distraction with an amusing anecdote about a time that one of their bandmates got really drunk and got into a fight with a peacock. If Miriam seems to enjoy this story and get something out of it, that will mean a mark on the tracker.
I do think that Miriam enjoys the story, especially if Rowan physically enacts parts of it.
Yeah. Rowan is usually quite subdued and quiet and not very animated, but when they feel comfortable, and they're starting to definitely feel comfortable in Miriam's company, they will do aggressive sort of pecking motions with their head to enact the peacock attacking this drunk bandmate and the horrified expression of the bandmate as they are under attack. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that happens.
So I think after about like a couple of hours, it starts to get a bit colder and a little darker. So do you think that they would still hang out at the park, or do you think they would go for like a coffee or something?
Yeah, I think a coffee would be a good idea. I think Rowan would suggest this little very hipstery cafe nearby that is all bare wood and pot plants.
Sounds good. Miriam would brighten as Rowan suggested the place, because it is also near her work. So it's like one of her favorite places to go for lunch or coffee in the middle of work. What do you think this place is called?
I think it's something like the Keen Bean.
So they go to the Keen Bean. I feel like the barista would react to the two of us being together and be like, oh, hey, I didn't realize you two knew each other, because we obviously both come in a lot separately. How do you think we react individually to this?
Rowan would have an initial sense of panic of, I'm not quite sure how to respond to this in a way that would be A, showing that I am enjoying these dates, and B, not putting any undue pressure on Miriam as to defining the state of this relationship currently. So we'd probably go into freeze, deer in headlight mode for a few seconds, and if no answer was forthcoming from Miriam, we'd attempt something.
I think Miriam would also panic, but instead of silence, I think would veer towards the babbling, rambling approach, and probably just be like, what? No, I mean, we kind of, well, I wouldn't say no, but I just, like, they're great. And how's your day going? And we'll try to shift focus to the barista, who obviously, like, we have made casual conversation with before.
And I think this will give Rowan enough time to unfreeze, and at an appropriate point in the conversation, we'll make it clear that, yeah, we've been having a nice time hanging out. It's been really nice. and just not really elaborate on that very much more, but just try and make it clear in a very awkward way that this has been an enjoyable experience in the presence of another human being.
I think the fact that Rowan and Miriam are so awkward is like clearly at some point clues the barista in, and he sort of goes, oh, in a way that like immediately makes both of us like really, well, at least for Miriam, like makes her redden completely. Looks anywhere but at Rowan, place the order, and then go, and you? And just still not looking at you.
Yeah, I think Rowan very sort of, as firmly as they can, places an order and moves to find a table.
Miriam will hang out at the counter to wait for our orders and then come to our table and laugh awkwardly to break the ice, kind of, to see how Rowan reacts, and sort of will also say, in a quick rush, we'll say the words, so how do you think this is going then? Except it'll come out as, so how do you think this is going then? And it just not necessarily make sense.
I think Rowan will take a few seconds to process and then sort of reverse engineer what the sentence was meant to be and then say, I'm having a really nice time. I'm not great at, I don't know, showing when I'm having a good time, enjoying something. People kind of tend to say that, I don't know, I look like I'm at a funeral all the time. But yeah, I want to be better at that, and I want to be clear that yeah, I think you're neat. No, neat sounds bad. But you know.
And I mean, given what I previously said about Miriam's feeling about straight lines, I feel that Miriam already perks up at the word neat. I'm just like, that's good. In the fashion of cafes, they've put little latte art hearts on our coffees. And so I kind of move my coffee next to yours to be like, here's a heart.
Rowan just kind of looks down and does a very, very gentle smile and takes a sip of their drink.
So how many marks do you have at this point?
I have 2 in one column and 1 in the other. If I kind of probe something a little more, I might be able to get another mark, but it may just even things out, so that might not be helpful. So I think Rowan will say, do you mind that I'm maybe not the most expressive person? Is that a problem?
You see Miriam's eyes soften, but also then, in typical fashion, babbles indignantly about the standards that extroverted people have set for what the appropriate level of expressiveness is and how it's so unfair, and I don't understand why it's a thing. It goes off in like a tangent and just ends it by being like, no, I don't mind. I like it. You're good. You're great. It's all good.
Thank you. And that evens out my columns, so we're stuck in this date forever. But luckily it's very nice, so it's probably fine.
How does Rowan drink their coffee? Describe it.
They probably take a long sniff before drinking. If you're looking very closely, you can tell that they kind of hold the coffee in their mouth for a good few seconds before swallowing it, as if to kind of get all the flavour out of it.
That's a very nice way of answering my question, but also does not help with this column thing at all.
Very fair.
Ooh, I know. Rowan, would you say, I mean, I recognize this is a little strange since we are, in fact, at a cafe, but still, this is a second date. You could have been doing it for my sake. Would you say you are a coffee person or a tea person? What do you prefer the taste of?
That's a good question. I tend to drink a lot of tea when I'm at home because it's easier to make and I find it very comforting. But I like having the occasional coffee when I'm out as a treat, and because I don't trust that I can make it as nice as a barista can make it.
I have 10 marks.
Ooh.
Not in one column, but I have 10 marks.
Interesting. Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of tot up our scores and see what happens.
Yeah, let's do it.
According to the rules, it is now time for the confrontation scene, Once we are both sure of our choices, we'll point at each other at the same time and declare either that's a moray or that's a moray, and then immediately clarify what we mean. The book is very clear that this step is essential. And then after the accusations have been made, we can reveal whether we are a human or a moray eel. And then we have to mark down whether we guessed correctly or not.
So how many ticks in a particular column imply that the confirmation of your humanness or your eelness, Maddy?
For Miriam, I have 4 ticks in the human column and 3 ticks in the eel column.
Nice. For Rowan, I have 7 ticks in the green flag column and 3 ticks in the eel column.
Cool. Okay. I think it's safe to say we're both saying that's amore, as in the Italian for love.
Should we say it together?
Yeah, let's do it. 1, 2,
Okay.
3.
That's
amore.
amore.
First of all, were we correct in our assumptions that we're both actually humans? I am indeed a human.
I am also a human.
Ah.
So we're both human, and we guessed correctly that the other person is human, and we did not suspect more than we should have that the other person was an eel. So we go for page A. I'm going to let you roll a d6.
Yes, I got a 4. So the book says, it was the lists that saved you, that defined your love so early on. Over the years, however, as you both grow and change, you both come to resent that list, to have your entire personality bound to such a restrictive thing. You find that neither of you are able to live up to that list, and it is only couples counseling that saves you, as you are both made to internalize the mantra, lists are not love. Lists are not love.
Hey, lists are a kind of love.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's fair.
Yeah.
I think if couples counseling tells us something, we should probably internalize
Yeah,
it.
I think that's fair. I think it makes sense for both of our characters that we might adhere too strongly to lists and then have to be gently peeled away from that. But it also indicates that we do end up figuring out how to be in a healthy relationship. So that's lovely.
Yay. Yeah. I love that this is what we're taking from this, and not that like everything eventually sours and goes to hell, which is honestly, I feel like in 2024 we would be forgiven for taking that from the messaging. But yes, I'm glad that we are taking the positive spin on this.
Yeah.
I think this is really fun as an icebreaker game, but I think it's also really fun as an example to people who might not necessarily be able to internalize what othering is, when you kind of say that, you know, like, what are 5 things that you would say about this group that is not you, that is not part of your group, and that defines them, and then trying to see whether your interactions with someone from a suspected member of that group actually meet that criteria. I think that would be really interesting to approach it from that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So out of interest, what were the questions that you were asking on your different lists?
So for me, someone who was a moray eel in disguise, when music that they liked came up, a moray eel in disguise would not be able to help doing the worm as a dance move. They would slurp their liquids, whatever they were drinking. They would wear 2 or 3 or more layers at all times. They would have a strange affinity for water bodies. They would refuse to eat or claim to be deathly allergic to seafood. And the last thing that I added was they prefer tea over coffee, because I'm a coffee drinker.
Nice.
What about you?
My is that an eel questions were likes octopus or squid, hence the calamari, has a powerful jaw or bite, hence the question about eating pizza, clammy or mucousy skin, fast reflexes, and poor eyesight. These were all things that I looked up eels on Wikipedia for biological facts, because I wanted to make this a learning experience.
You played it very close to the...
Yeah.
I love it. And also, but just out of curiosity, in what world do you think someone on a date would say, yes, my hands are mucousy, but you don't seem to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And then what were your green flags?
My green flags were the same taste in music, to show up wearing the same color, to say a word or phrase at the same time, that the person or creature is indignant when the world is mean to you, and is not afraid to show physical affection.
Nice. I've got shares my interests, willing to accept my flaws, good sense of humour, kind, and good communicator.
Well, there you go.
Thank you so much, Poorna, for playing this with me, and to you and Armaan both for creating this game / laying out this game reluctantly. I hope we can play again sometime. And yeah, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and for the excitement for That's a Moray, and for the flexibility in figuring out when we could play it. It was much, much appreciated.
You are very, very welcome.
Flexible, one might say.
Like an eel. And where on the internet can people find you and your work?
People can find me at poornamakesthings.h.io, and also at Poorna Makes Things at Blue Sky. They can also find our stuff if they look up Weave Games. We have a Substack, weavegames.substack.com. So yeah, those are the main places where you can find me. You also occasionally will find me on a bunch of APs for a bunch of different streaming channels, but most often on Daisies and Dragons, which is India's largest TTRPG community.
Wonderful. And you can find links to all those things down in the podcast description. And thank you again for listening to this episode of A Game of One's Own. Our theme music, as always, is by James Barbarossa. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/snazzytapier for all the bonus goodies. You can find the show on social media at A Game of One's Own, and find out more about my work at snazzytapier.com or at Maddy is Abstract on social media. See you next time for more weird stories.